Have you ever felt a profound, unshakable sense that your animal companion is trying to tell you something far beyond their usual barks or purrs? Have you witnessed a behavior so strange, so precisely timed, that it sent a shiver of cosmic awareness down your spine? If you have, you are not alone, and you are not imagining things. The universe is speaking, and our most loyal friends are its chosen messengers. Share this message if it resonates deep within your soul, and let us know in the comments if you've ever felt this sacred connection. Type "I resonate" or 777 to affirm this universal truth. You may be surprised to find how many of us have been touched by this divine guidance, waiting for the moment to understand. This is the story of one such awakening, a journey that began with a single, haunting howl and ended with a revelation that would forever alter the course of human consciousness. It begins with a quote from the sleeping prophet, Edgar Cayce, whose words echo from the past with an eerie prescience. Your dog isn't acting strange. Your dog is trying to save your life. For Dr. Chen, a woman whose entire world was built upon the solid bedrock of empirical data and scientific reason, the concept of a reality beyond the measurable was a foreign language. Yet, for 3 agonizing weeks, she was plunged into a state of spiritual unrest, a deep and unsettling sleeplessness that logic could not pacify. Her nights were not merely disturbed, they were shattered by a phenomenon that defied every principle she held dear. It wasn't the exhaustion that gnawed at her soul, but the source of her torment. Max, her gentle, loving golden retriever. Her faithful companion, who had been a source of unwavering comfort, had become a herald of the unknown. The familiar, peaceful silence of their home was now a canvas for a sound that seemed to originate not from Max's throat, but from the very heart of the earth's sorrow. These were not the whimpers of a lonely animal. They were haunting, soul-piercing howls, a lament that seemed to carry the weight of an impending, unseen tragedy. It was a cry that resonated with a frequency her scientific instruments could not detect, but which her spirit felt with a chilling certainty. What truly unraveled Sarah's well-ordered reality, however, was not just the sound itself, but its terrifying, almost supernatural precision. It was the timing. Every single night, without fail, the ritual would begin. At precisely 3 a.m., a time ancient traditions call the witching hour, the veil between worlds thins, Max would rise. He would stand sentinel in her bedroom doorway, a silhouette against the encroaching darkness, and unleash a sound that was less a dog's whimper and more a vibrational warning from another dimension, an otherworldly dimension that existed just beyond the veil of human perception. It was a sound that seemed to bypass her ears and vibrate directly within the chambers of her heart, a sacred language of anguish that spoke of things her rational mind refused to comprehend. Sarah, a doctor of science, a believer in cause and effect, felt the foundations of her reality begin to crack. She started to question her own sanity, wondering if the relentless pressure of her work had finally caused her mind to fracture. She felt a profound sense of isolation, adrift in a sea of inexplicable events, believing she was losing her mind. This torment continued, a nightly assault on her senses and her sanity, until a moment of pure destiny intervened. It was an afternoon spent clearing out the relics of a life lived long ago, in the dusty, forgotten attic of her late grandfather, that a divine breadcrumb was laid upon her path. There, tucked away in the shadows, she stumbled upon a dusty, unassuming file cabinet, a time capsule waiting for the right soul to unlock its secrets. Inside this forgotten repository, her trembling hands, guided by an unseen force, discovered a collection of yellowed, brittle pages. They were filled with the transcribed trance readings and predictions of Edgar Cayce, the legendary sleeping prophet, a man who had passed from this world decades before Sarah was even born. As she began to read, her scientifically trained mind initially sought to dismiss the words as the fever dreams of a madman, the ramblings of a bygone era's mystic. But a frightening, undeniable accuracy began to emerge from the text. a pattern of fulfilled prophecies that made her scientific mind buzz with a storm of new, terrifying possibilities. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the overwhelming power of recognition as she read the words that would change everything, the prophecy that seemed to be unfolding in her very own home. Cayce had written, "Faithful companions, the loyal beasts of man, will become the guardians of the unseen. They will not howl in pain, but from the perception of frequencies beyond human detection. They will warn of what is coming in the darkness, speaking in tongues of anguish that only the pure of heart can understand." A profound chill washed over her. Pure of heart? Was her heart pure enough to heed the warning before it was too late? In that moment, the puzzle pieces of her life began to click into place. The nightly howls, the precise timing, the sense of impending doom, it was all there, foretold in the dusty pages of a prophet. Sarah put the papers down, her breath catching in her throat. As if summoned by her thoughts from outside her room, Max began his nightly ritual. The clock read 3 a.m. Something was coming, and her dog, her beautiful, faithful Max, was the only one who truly knew what it was. The question that would now haunt her for months was no longer about her sanity, but about her spirit. Would she have a pure enough heart to truly listen and understand the warning before it was too late? Edgar Cayce's predictions, which had once seemed like the ravings of a disturbed mind, now carried the undeniable weight of a frightening accuracy. They were a key, unlocking a door to a reality she had never known existed. He had described with startling clarity how dogs would begin to sense the vibrations of impending calamity, exhibiting behaviors that would seem utterly mad to their human companions. They were not losing their minds. They were attuning to the Earth's own anguish. The more Sarah read, the deeper she delved into Cayce's mystical world, a world where science and spirit were not in opposition, but were two sides of the same divine coin. He had predicted the dogs would begin speaking the language of Earth's suffering, sensing its distress signals decades before any human instrument could ever hope to detect what was coming. According to his visions, these animals would serve as living seismographs, emotional barometers, and spiritual sentinels, all rolled into one sacred, living warning system. But Sarah quickly realized that the most terrifying part of the prophecy wasn't about the dogs themselves. It was about what they were trying to warn humanity about. "A great change is coming," he had written, his words a chilling echo across time. "And only those who listen to the four-legged prophets will survive what is coming." Overwhelmed but resolute, Sarah looked at Max, who was now sitting perfectly still, staring intently at an empty wall, with an intensity that chilled her to the bone. What was he seeing that she couldn't? What cosmic horror was looming on the horizon that only his heightened senses, his pure heart, could perceive? This was no longer a personal mystery, it was a global emergency. Sarah's research lab at the university, once a place of cold, hard facts, became her obsession chamber, a sanctuary where she would attempt to bridge the gap between the seen and the unseen. She set up an array of the most sensitive equipment available, placing sensors around all of Max's favorite spots, hoping to capture the invisible forces he was responding to. She was measuring everything: electromagnetic frequencies, subtle seismic activity, and infinitesimal changes in atmospheric pressure. For 3 long days and nights, there was nothing. The instruments remained silent, mocking her with their inactivity. Then, on the 4th night, her world was turned upside down. The instruments went haywire. At exactly 2:58 a.m., just 2 minutes before Max's usual soul-wrenching howl, all the equipment registered a storm of anomalous readings. The electromagnetic field fluctuated wildly, the needles on her charts dancing a chaotic ballet. Her highly sensitive seismic sensors detected a cascade of micro-tremors, vibrations so subtle they were completely imperceptible to humans. And most astonishingly, the atmospheric pressure in the room dropped by precisely 0.3 millibars, a tiny but significant deviation from the norm. The data was irrefutable. Max wasn't just howling at ghosts or imaginary phantoms. He was responding to real, measurable physical phenomena that existed far beyond the limited scope of ordinary human perception. Sarah's hands shook as she compiled the data, her scientific mind reeling. The patterns were undeniable. Max wasn't suffering from a behavioral problem. He was fulfilling an ancient, sacred, ancestral duty. He was serving as a guardian of humanity, but a guardian against what? The more data she collected, the more terrifying the emerging scenario became. Each night, the readings on her instruments grew louder, more urgent, more insistent, as if whatever was coming was drawing closer, its presence growing stronger with each passing hour. Sarah realized she was witnessing something that would redefine everything science thought it knew about animal behavior, about psychic phenomena, and about the delicate, intricate balance between our world and everything that lies beyond the veil of human perception. The instruments weren't lying. Something was definitely coming. What began as a private, desperate investigation by Sarah soon exploded into a global phenomenon. When she published her preliminary findings online, cautiously sharing her data and the strange story of Max, her inbox was instantly flooded. Within hours, messages poured in from dog owners all around the world, each one reporting identical, inexplicable behaviors. A farmer in Kansas described how his border collie had begun howling at empty fields with a sorrowful intensity. A family in Tokyo shared videos of their normally calm and composed Shiba Inu pacing frantically at the exact same time every single night, its eyes filled with a primal fear. An elderly woman in the remote highlands of Scotland wrote about her terrier's sudden, uncanny ability to predict minor earthquakes, whining and hiding a full 3 days before they happened. The stories were a deluge, a global chorus of canine distress. But the most disturbing and corroborating reports came not from owners, but from veterinarians. Dr. Marcus Webb, a respected veterinarian from Atlanta, contacted Sarah with chilling data. He presented evidence of a staggering 340% increase in unexplained behavioral changes among dogs across his practice over the past 6 months. Dogs were suddenly abandoning their favorite toys, refusing familiar foods, and exhibiting what could only be described as acute, unprovoked anxiety disorders. The pattern was global, it was simultaneous, and it was completely and utterly unprecedented. Sarah realized with a dawning horror that she wasn't just dealing with a series of isolated incidents. She was witnessing the early, terrifying stages of something Edgar Cayce had predicted nearly 8 decades ago. Dogs weren't just behaving strangely, they were trying to tell humanity something crucial, something vital for its survival. As she plotted the locations of these reports on a world map, an even more precise and frightening pattern emerged. Each location reporting unusual canine behavior followed specific geographic coordinates, forming a grid-like pattern across the planet that was far too precise to be a mere coincidence. Something was orchestrating this global awakening, and its power was growing stronger with every passing day. Sarah's investigation eventually led her to Dr. James Whitmore, a reclusive geologist specializing in tectonic activity. Whitmore, working in secret, had been quietly tracking the very same geographic anomalies for years. His maps, which he cautiously shared with Sarah, showed a network of deep Earth fault lines, activating in sequences that defied all conventional geological models. But it was when Sarah overlaid her map of the dog's behavioral data onto Whitmore's seismic maps that they discovered something truly earth-shattering. A revelation that made both scientists question everything they thought they knew about the natural world. The dogs weren't just predicting earthquakes. They were responding to a deeper, more ancient, more fundamental rhythm in the earth itself. Dr. Sarah Chen hadn't slept well in 3 weeks, not since her golden retriever Max began making those haunting midnight howls that seemed to pierce her soul. But it wasn't just the howl that kept her awake, it was the timing. every night. At precisely 3:17 a.m., Max would stand in her bedroom doorway and let out a sound that sounded less like a dog's whimper and more like a warning from another world. Sarah thought she was losing her mind until she stumbled upon a dusty file cabinet in her late grandfather's attic. Inside, yellowed pages contained the predictions of Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet who died decades before Sarah was born. Her hands shook as she read the words that would change everything. Faithful companions will become the guardians of the unseen. They will warn of what is coming in the darkness, speaking in tongues of anguish that only the pure of heart can understand. Sarah put the papers down. Outside, Max began his nightly ritual. It was 3:17 a.m. Something was coming, and her dog was the only one who knew what it was. The question that would haunt her for months was simple, yet frightening. Would she have a pure enough heart to heed the warning before it was too late? Edgar Cayce's predictions sounded like the fever dreams of a madman, but they carried a frightening accuracy that made Sarah's scientific mind buzz with possibilities. In 1944, in one of his famous trance states, Cayce spoke of a time when the loyal beast of man would howl not in pain, but from the perception of frequencies beyond human detection. He described dogs sensing vibrations of impending calamity and exhibiting behaviors that would seem mad to their human companions. The more Sarah read, the deeper she delved into Cayce's mystical world. He predicted that dogs would begin speaking the language of Earth's anguish decades before any human instrument could detect what was coming. According to his visions, these animals would serve as living seismographs, emotional barometers, and spiritual sentinels, all rolled into one. But the scariest part wasn't about the dogs themselves. It was about what they were trying to warn us about. A great change is coming, he had written, and only those who listen to the four-legged prophets will survive what is coming. Sarah looked at Max, who was now sitting perfectly still, staring at the wall with an intensity that chilled her. What was he seeing that she couldn't? What cosmic horror was coming that only he could perceive? Sarah's research lab at the university became her obsession chamber. She set up sensitive equipment around Max's favorite spots, measuring electromagnetic frequencies, seismic activity, and changes in atmospheric pressure. For 3 days, nothing. Then, on the fourth night, the instruments went haywire. At exactly 3:15 a.m., 2 minutes before Max's usual howl, all the equipment registered anomalous readings. The electromagnetic field fluctuated wildly. Seismic sensors detected micro-tremors imperceptible to humans, and atmospheric pressure dropped by precisely 0.3 millibars. Max wasn't just howling at ghosts. He was responding to real, measurable phenomena that existed beyond human perception. Sarah's hands shook as she compiled the data. The patterns were undeniable. Max wasn't having behavioral problems. He was fulfilling his ancestral duty as a guardian of humanity. But guardian against what? The more data she collected, the more terrifying the scenario became. Each night, the readings grew louder, more urgent, as if whatever was coming was getting closer. Sarah realized she was witnessing something that would redefine everything science thought it knew about animal behavior, psychic phenomena, and the delicate balance between our world and everything that lies beyond the veil of human perception. The instruments weren't lying. Something was definitely coming. What began as a private investigation by Sarah exploded into a global phenomenon when she published her preliminary findings online. Within hours, her inbox was flooded with messages from dog owners around the world reporting identical behaviors. A farmer in Kansas described his border collie howling at empty fields. A family in Tokyo shared videos of their normally calm Shiba Inu pacing frantically at the same time every night. An elderly woman in Scotland wrote about her terrier's sudden ability to predict earthquakes 3 days before they happened. But the most disturbing reports came from veterinarians. Dr. Marcus Webb of Atlanta contacted Sarah with data showing a 340% increase in unexplained behavioral changes among dogs over the past 6 months. Dogs were abandoning favorite toys, refusing familiar foods, and exhibiting what could only be described as acute anxiety disorders. The pattern was global, simultaneous, and completely unprecedented. Sarah realized that she wasn't dealing with isolated incidents. She was witnessing the early stages of something Edgar Cayce had predicted nearly 8 decades ago. Dogs weren't just behaving strangely. They were trying to tell humanity something crucial. Each location reporting unusual canine behavior followed specific geographic coordinates that formed a pattern too precise to be coincidental. Something was orchestrating this global awakening, and it was growing stronger. Sarah's investigation led her to Dr. James Whitmore, a geologist specializing in tectonic activity who had been quietly tracking the same geographic anomalies. His maps showed fault lines activating in sequences that defied conventional geological models. But when Sarah overlaid her dog's behavioral data on Whitmore's seismic maps, they discovered something that made both scientists question everything they thought they knew about the natural world. The dogs weren't just predicting earthquakes, they were responding to a deeper, more ancient rhythm in the Earth itself. Whitmore's research revealed that the planet was entering a phase of geological instability not seen in more than 12,000 years. The magnetic poles were shifting faster than ever before, and deep within the Earth's crust, pressures were building toward what could only be described as a planetary recalibration. Dogs, with their heightened sensitivity to electromagnetic fields and subsonic frequencies, were the first to sense Earth's distress signals. Edgar Cayce had somehow foreseen this moment when he spoke of the Great Change. But as they compared their findings, Sarah and Whitmore realized that the implications went far beyond natural disasters. The Earth was changing at a fundamental level, and humanity's faithful companions were desperately trying to prepare us for a transformation that would challenge our very survival. The question was no longer what the dogs were sensing, but whether humanity would listen before it was too late. The breakthrough came when Sarah isolated the specific frequency that was triggering Max's responses. Using advanced acoustic equipment, she discovered that dogs around the world were responding to a subsonic pulse occurring at precisely 7.3 Hertz, the same frequency as the Schumann resonance, Earth's natural heartbeat. But something was wrong with the planet's rhythm. The frequency was fluctuating wildly, sometimes dipping to dangerously low levels, other times spiking beyond normal parameters. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a physicist specializing in electromagnetic phenomena, joined Sarah's growing team of researchers. Together, they discovered evidence that Earth's electromagnetic field was not just changing, it was destabilizing at an accelerating rate. The dogs were responding to these fluctuations because their nervous systems were naturally tuned to frequencies that kept them connected to the planet's vital signals. Edgar Cayce's prophecy was coming true in the most literal sense. The vibrations of impending doom he had described were measurable, scientific facts. But the most frightening discovery was not the frequency shifts themselves, but their origin. Deep core samples revealed that something was happening deep within the Earth's molten interior, something that was sending shockwaves through every layer of the planet's structure. Dogs could sense this because they were still connected to ancient survival instincts that modern humans had forgotten. They were nature's early warning system, and they were shouting a message that humanity desperately needed to hear. As Sarah dug deeper into the phenomenon, she discovered that dogs were not just individual sensors. They functioned as nodes in a vast psychic network that stretched across the entire planet. Each dog's behavior was connected to others thousands of miles away, creating a living web of consciousness capable of processing information at a speed and complexity that dwarfed any human technology. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a neuroscientist who studies animal cognition, brought startling evidence to Sarah's team. Brain scans of affected dogs showed synchronized neural activity across continents, as if they were all connected to the same massive consciousness. This wasn't just behavioral mimicry, it was genuine telepathic communication operating at a frequency never before accessed by humans. Edgar Cayce had written about it too, describing a time when animals spoke with one voice across valleys and oceans, their minds united in the service of the greater warning. The dogs were literally sharing information in real time, creating a global intelligence network that monitored the condition of the planet with unprecedented precision. But the most disturbing discovery was that this network grew stronger every day, drawing more dogs into its fold as the condition of the Earth worsened. Sarah realized that she wasn't just studying animal behavior. She was witnessing the birth of a collective consciousness that included every dog on Earth. The question was whether this consciousness would survive long enough to sound its warning, or whether it would die out under the pressure of processing humanity's impending catastrophe. 3 months into the investigation, Sarah's world came crashing down when Max collapsed during his nighttime vigil. A veterinary examination revealed something that defied medical explanation. Max's neural pathways showed signs of extreme overstimulation, as if his brain were processing information far beyond the normal canine capacity. He wasn't sick, he was overwhelmed by the sheer volume of sensory input he was receiving. This was happening to dogs all over the world. The same neural overstimulation was being reported in veterinary clinics on every continent. Animals were literally exhausted from the intensity of their psychic burden. Sarah realized that Edgar Cayce's sleeping prophet abilities could have come from the same heightened sensitivity that now afflicted millions of dogs. Earth's frequency shifts weren't just affecting animal behavior, they were awakening dormant psychic abilities in species that had maintained their connection to the planet's natural rhythms. But this awakening came at a terrible price. The dogs were sacrificing their own well-being to serve as humanity's guardians, and they were dying in the process. Sarah held Max's weakened form and realized that she was witnessing the most profound act of interspecies loyalty in human history. These animals were literally giving their lives to warn humanity of a threat so great that only their ancient wisdom could perceive it. The psychic network was collapsing under its own intensity, and time was running out for both the dogs and the message they were desperate to convey. With Max in critical but stable condition, Sarah made a discovery that would change everything. Using advanced computer algorithms, she finally decoded the hidden pattern in the global data of canine behavior. The howling, the pacing, the anxiety. This was not random distress. It was a language, a complex communication system that dogs used to convey a message at frequencies that humans could barely detect. The message was simple, urgent, and terrifying. Listen, change, survive. But embedded in this basic warning was something much more complex. Coordinates, dates, and a detailed map of what was to come. The dogs were trying to tell humanity exactly where and when Earth's transformation would begin, providing a survival guide written in the language of loyalty and love. Dr. Vasquez's frequency analysis revealed that the dogs were transmitting on multiple levels simultaneously. Some information was meant for immediate human comprehension, while other data was being stored in harmonic resonances that would only become clear later. Edgar Cayce described this phenomenon as the patience of the faithful, who speak not only for today, but for all the tomorrows that may come. The dogs were not merely warning of a single catastrophic event. They were providing humanity with a roadmap for navigating an entirely new phase of planetary existence. Sarah realized that Max and millions of other dogs were serving as living libraries, preserving information crucial to survival in their neural networks and transmitting it through behaviors that seemed crazy to human observers. The message was complete, but would humanity understand it in time? The truth hit Sarah like a cosmic bolt of lightning when she finally understood what the dogs were trying to communicate. They weren't just sensing geological shifts, they were in direct contact with the planet's own consciousness. Using quantum field theory and consciousness research, Sarah's team discovered that Earth possessed a form of consciousness that existed at frequencies far below human perception. The dogs never lost their connection to this planetary mind because they never developed the intellectual barriers that prevented humans from perceiving subtle energies. Edgar Cayce's most controversial prediction was coming true. The planet was a living entity, and it was trying to communicate with the only species that had remained sensitive enough to hear its voice. The frequency shifts, the electromagnetic fluctuations, the seismic anomalies, these were not random natural phenomena. They were attempts by Earth to communicate its distress and its plans for healing. The dogs served as translators between two forms of consciousness that had been separated by millennia of human evolution. Through their sacrifice, they were offering humanity a chance to reconnect with the living world that had always been their home. The implications were staggering. Humanity's relationship with Earth was not just environmental, it was psychic, spiritual, and far more intimate than anyone could have imagined. Max stirred in Sarah's arms, his eyes meeting hers with an intelligence that transcended species, boundaries. In that moment, she understood that she was being chosen as humanity's representative in the most important conversation in the history of either species. The planetary consciousness was communicating through dogs, offering one last chance for communication before the great transformation began. As the decoded message spread through scientific communities around the world, Sarah faced an impossible decision. Governments wanted to weaponize the information, corporations saw opportunities for profit, and religious groups claimed the phenomenon as proof of their diverse beliefs. But the dogs kept dying, still sacrificing themselves to maintain the communication link between humanity and the planetary consciousness. Sarah realized that Edgar Cayce's prophecy contained a crucial element that she had overlooked. Only those who listen to the four-legged prophets will survive what is coming. Survival was not just physical, it was spiritual, emotional, and intellectual. Humanity had to choose between embracing this new relationship with the Earth or continuing on the destructive path that had brought the planet to this tipping point. The dogs were offering humanity a chance at redemption, an opportunity to heal. The wounded relationship between human consciousness and planetary consciousness. But this healing required more than scientific understanding. It required humility, faith, and a willingness to accept that human intelligence was not the only form of wisdom on Earth. Sarah looked at Max, whose breathing had become more even, since she had begun meditating with him, opening her mind to the frequencies he could perceive. Slowly, she began to feel it, a presence, ancient and vast, reaching across the void between species with a message of desperate love and an urgent warning. The Earth was in crisis, but it also offered humanity one last chance to remember who it really was and what its true relationship to the planet could become. The choice belonged to each human being, but time was running out for both species. 6 months after that first sleepless night, Sarah stood before the United Nations, delivering the most important speech in human history. Behind her, a screen displayed real-time data from thousands of dogs around the world, their collective behavior patterns forming a living map of planetary consciousness. Edgar Cayce's prophecy had been fulfilled in ways he could never have imagined. Dogs had not merely warned humanity, they had become the bridge between two worlds, the translators of a conversation that would determine the future of all life. On Earth, Max sat silently beside Sarah, his role as herald complete, his sacrifice acknowledged by a world finally ready to listen. The data was undeniable. The planet was entering a phase of transformation that would reshape the very foundations of reality. But this transformation did not have to be catastrophic. With dogs as guides, humanity could learn to work with planetary consciousness rather than against it, becoming partners in a cosmic dance that had been interrupted for too long. Sarah's voice echoed through the silent assembly as she delivered Earth's message through the wisdom of her most faithful guardians. The great change that Edgar Cayce had foreseen was not an end. It was a call to remember that humans have never been alone on this planet, and that their oldest friends had been trying to teach them that lesson all along. Dogs had kept watch during humanity's darkest hours, and now, in humanity's hour of greatest need, they offered the gift of reconnection with the living world. The choice, as always, was humanity's. Dogs had delivered their message perfectly. The question was whether someone would finally be ready to listen and act before it was too late for both species. Whitmore's research revealed that the planet was entering a phase of profound geological instability, a recalibration not seen in more than 12,000 years. The magnetic poles were shifting faster than ever recorded in history, and deep within the Earth's molten crust, immense pressures were building, pressures that were building toward what could only be described as a planetary recalibration. The dogs, with their heightened, primal sensitivity to electromagnetic fields and subsonic frequencies, were the first to sense the Earth's distress signals. Edgar Cayce had somehow foreseen this exact moment, this great change. As Sarah and Whitmore compared their findings, they realized the implications went far beyond natural disasters. The Earth was changing at a fundamental vibrational level, and humanity's faithful companions, our dogs, were desperately trying to prepare us for a transformation that would challenge our very survival. The question was no longer what the dogs were sensing, but whether humanity would finally choose to listen before it was too late. The breakthrough came when Sarah, collaborating with a growing team of renegade scientists, finally isolated the specific frequency that was triggering Max's responses. A neuroscientist, Dr. Rebecca Martinez, who studied animal cognition, brought startling evidence to the team. Brain scans of the affected dogs from around the world showed perfectly synchronized neural activity across continents, as if they were all connected to the same massive, singular consciousness. This wasn't just behavioral mimicry, it was genuine telepathic communication, operating at a frequency never before accessed or even imagined by humans. Using advanced acoustic equipment, they discovered that dogs around the world were responding to a subsonic pulse, a low-frequency hum occurring at precisely 7.3 Hz. This was a frequency just below the normal range of human hearing, but it was almost identical to the Schumann resonance, the Earth's natural electromagnetic heartbeat. But something was terribly wrong with the planet's rhythm. The frequency was fluctuating wildly, sometimes dipping to dangerously low levels, other times spiking far beyond its normal parameters. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a physicist specializing in electromagnetic phenomena, joined the team and confirmed their fears. The frequency shifts, the electromagnetic fluctuations, the seismic anomalies, these were not random natural phenomena. They were deliberate attempts by the Earth to communicate its distress and its plans for healing. The dogs, our faithful companions, were serving as translators between two forms of consciousness that had been separated by millennia of human evolution and intellectual disconnect. Through their sacrifice, they were offering humanity a chance to reconnect with the living world that had always been their home. The implications were staggering. Humanity's relationship with the Earth was not just environmental, it was psychic, it was spiritual, and it was far more intimate and profound than anyone could have ever imagined. Max stirred in Sarah's arms, his life force waning, his eyes meeting hers with an ancient intelligence that transcended the boundaries of species. In that profound, silent moment, she understood. She was being chosen as humanity's representative in the most important conversation in the history of either species. The planetary consciousness was communicating through the dogs, offering one last, desperate chance for communication before the great transformation began. As the decoded message spread like wildfire through scientific communities around the world, Sarah faced an impossible decision. Governments wanted to weaponize the information, corporations saw opportunities for unimaginable profit, and religious groups claimed the phenomenon as proof of their own diverse beliefs. But through it all, the dogs kept dying, sacrificing themselves to maintain the fragile communication link between humanity and the planetary consciousness. Sarah realized that Edgar Cayce's prophecy contained a crucial element she had previously overlooked. Only those who listen to the four-legged prophets will survive what is coming. Survival, she now understood, was not just physical. It was spiritual, emotional, and intellectual. Humanity had to choose between embracing this new, sacred relationship with the Earth or continuing on the destructive path of ignorance that had brought the planet to this critical tipping point. The dogs were offering humanity a chance at redemption, an opportunity to heal the wounded relationship between human consciousness and planetary consciousness. But this healing required more than just scientific understanding. It required humility, it required faith, and it required a willingness to accept that human intelligence was not the only form of wisdom on Earth. Sarah looked down at Max, whose breathing had finally become more even and peaceful, ever since she had begun meditating with him, opening her own mind to the frequencies he could perceive. Slowly, she began to feel it too, a presence, ancient and vast, reaching across the void between species with a message of desperate love and an urgent warning. The Earth was in crisis, but it also offered humanity one last chance to remember who it really was and what its true relationship to the planet could become. The choice, as always, belonged to each human being, but time was running out for both species. 6 months after that first sleepless night, Sarah stood before the United Nations, delivering the most important speech in human history. Behind her, a massive screen displayed real-time data from thousands of dogs around the world, their collective behavior patterns forming a living, breathing map of planetary consciousness. Edgar Cayce's prophecy had been fulfilled in ways he could never have imagined. The dogs had not merely warned humanity, they had become the bridge between two worlds, the translators of a conversation that would determine the future of all life on Earth. Max sat silently beside Sarah, his role as herald complete, his sacrifice acknowledged by a world finally ready to listen. The data was undeniable. The planet was entering a phase of transformation that would reshape the very foundations of reality. But this transformation did not have to be catastrophic. With dogs as guides, humanity could learn to work with planetary consciousness rather than against it, becoming partners in a cosmic dance that had been interrupted for far too long.